With the passage of time, the differences grew wider between the two groups, leading in the end to one group paving the way for Hinayan and the other for Mahayana. Both these groups in turn got divided progressively into several sects, numbering 18 according to traditional accounts. In fact, there are several overlapping lists of these 18 schools that have been preserved in the Buddhist literature, totaling about twice as many, though some may be alternative names for the same schools. It is thought that in all probability the traditional numbers are merely conventional and the actual number may have been different. Among the groups that developed from the Mahasangika sect were the Ekvyak Viharikas, then the Gokulikas, and finally the Chaitikas. The Ekvyavarika sect most likely gave rise in turn to the Lokuttarvadins. From the Gokulikas came the Bahushrutiyas and the Pragyaptivadins. A group of the Chaitikas who had settled in the Andhra region gave birth to the Purvashailas, the Upper Shailas, the Rajgirikas and the Siddharthikas. Together these four sects formed Andhrak group, taking their name from the region of Andhra where they flourished. From this Sthavirvad group originated the Vatsiputriyas, who maintained the existence of a quasi-autonomous Pudgal person. Later the Sarvastivadins separated from the non-Vatsiputriya Sthavirvadins over the Sarvastivadin notion that everything exists, Sarva Asti. Thereafter, the remaining Sthavirvadins, who had taken their name Vibhajyavadins, those who teach discrimination, got split into Mahishaskas and the Dharmguptakas, who opposed each other over the relative value of offerings made to the Buddha. Four new groups sprang from the Vatsiputriyas, namely the Dharmotriyas, the Bhadrayanikas, the Sanyagarikas and Samityas. The Samityas, who became very important in Indian Buddhism, later gave rise to the Avantak and the Kurukul schools. Another group that broke away from the Sarvastivadins became known as the Sautrantikas. The Kashpiyas, whose basic position was a compromise between those of the Sarvastivadins and the Vibhajyavadins, apparently broke from Vibhajyavadins shortly after the split that created the Sarvastivad and the Vibhajyavad Nikayas. More mysterious are the Hamvatas, about whom the available information is both sparse and contradictory. The Mool Sarvastivadins, that is radical Sarvastivadins, made their appearance with a gigantic Vinay Pitak in Sanskrit, which is different in many respects from that of the earlier Sarvastivadins. The Vatsiputriyas and the schools that later developed from them, particularly the Samityas, believed in the existence of a person, that is Pudgal, who does not exist independently of the five skandhas that make up his personality, but he is at the same time greater than the mere sum of his parts, living on from one existence to the next thus confirming the continuing identities of the agent of an act and of the being who undergoes its consequences in this life and the next. This hypothesis was rejected by all the other sects that maintained that it was logically impossible to conceptualize this kind of person without seeing in it some form of the Atman that had been rejected by the Buddhists. The Sarvastivadins made a claim that everything exists, sarvam asti. In other words, according to them, the past and the future have real and material existence. On the basis of this belief, they were able to explain several important phenomena such as memory of the past, consciousness of the future, and the ripening, that is vipak, of action, that is karma, taking place over a long or short period of time, often surpassing the length of a single life. However, the other sects strictly believed that the past does not exist anymore, and what is to happen in the future does not exist as yet. The Kashyapyas stood somewhere in the middle of these two positions and believed that whereas a past action that has not borne fruit as yet still exists, but the rest of the past does not. However, neither the Sarvastivadins nor the critics were happy with such an approach. As compared to the Sarvastivadins, the Sautantrikas believed that only the Sutra Pitak contained the authentic teachings of the Buddha. According to them, the Abhidharam Pitak was the work of the Buddha's disciples. The Sautrantikas also held the view that the five aggregates, the skandhas, constituting the living being, transmigrate from one existence to the next. Perhaps by this they meant that at the moment of death, four of these skandhas were assimilating into the fifth one, a subtle consciousness. The Mahishaskas and the Dharmaguptakas disagreed with regard to the Buddha's relationship with the Sangha. For the Mahishaskas, the Buddha is part of the Sangha, and hence a gift given to the Sangha produces a great fruit, but a gift directed specifically to the Buddha does not. As compared to this, the Dharmaguptakas held the view that the Sangha is composed only of the Buddha's followers, the latter being not only separate from the Sangha but far superior to it. Thus, according to them, only the gifts given to the Buddha produce a great fruit. The religious practices of early Buddhism were considerably influenced by these two opposing views.